Hello Gigawatt Robots, Ineffa is the new best support for electrocharge teams thanks to her unique ability to alter the reaction's mechanics. She also excels as a general electro shield support and elemental mastery buffer, making her flexible enough to slot into any team where the DPS benefits from elemental mastery. For builds, go with Thundering Fury for max damage or Tenacity of the Millilith if you need a stronger shield. Use attack percent, crit main stats, and prioritize crit with some attack, elemental mastery, and energy recharge in substats. Massive Wind Spear is her best free-to-play weapon, but you could also use Katane Cross Spear, the catch, or the Inazuman event polearm as other free-to-play alternatives. For upgrades, any 5-star polearm with high attack and crit, or either battle pass weapon works great too. Hi, I'm Aaron, and this is your Too Long Didn't Watch. If this is all the information you wanted, then I want to thank you for stopping by. But if you would like to support me, then you could take a bite out of that arugula-flavored subscribe button down below, and or keep the video playing. That is up to you. For everyone still here, let's bolt right into Ineffa's overview. Ineffa is the electrocharge support who can amplify the reaction to be more consistent while also being a sub-DPS that can shield and buff her team. Ineffa's skill is very simple. Upon use, she will deal AoE electro damage and then summon a shield for the active character, scaling based on her attack. After that, her friendly Brigitte bot will spawn, dealing damage once every 2 seconds. Both her Brigitte bot and shield last for 20 seconds. Her elemental burst deals a massive nuke of AoE electro damage to enemies, and then it will summon or redeploy her Brigitte bot. Ineffa has a special passive that makes her stand out from other characters. While she is in the party, Electrocharge cannot be triggered. Instead, it will be replaced with Lunar Charged, which is a reaction specific to Ineffa that summons a cloud over enemies and deals electro damage periodically when they have the Hydro and Electro auras on them. Additionally, the damage dealt by this reaction will be increased based on Ineffa's attack stat, capping at 14% increased base damage when at 2000 attack. Her first Ascension passive has her Brigitte bot deal an extra instance of Lunar Charge damage after it deals elemental skill damage while a Lunar Charged cloud is active. This extra instance of damage scales based on 65% of her attack. This damage also counts as direct Lunar Charge damage, which means the initial 65% attack value is multiplied by 3 for no reason, and this attack ignores defense. And for her Ascension 4 passive, Ineffa will grant the current active party member and herself an elemental mastery buff based on 6% of her current attack stat with no cap after she uses her burst. Ineffa's talent priority is straightforward. Level her skill first since it's her main source of utility, providing a strong shield, and it's about 25% of her overall damage. Next, focus on her burst for its high impact nuke potential. Skip her normal attacks though, as an off-field support like herself won't be using them. Thanks to her simple kit and Fischl-like gameplay, Ineffa's combos will feel very familiar. Ideally, you'll use both her skill and burst each rotation for the shield and elemental mastery buff, but the key is keeping her Brigitte bot active. If you don't need the shield every time, alternate between skill and burst. But if she's your only defensive support and energy is tight, prioritize her skill every rotation and use her burst when it's ready. Now that we've gone through her base kit, let's go through her constellations and see what they bring to the table. First up is her C1. When Ineffa summons her shield, she boosts nearby party members' Lunar Charge damage by 2.5% for every 100 attack she has, capping at 50% with 2000 attack. This buff is fantastic for amplifying her own damage via her Ascension 1 passive and boosting the entire team's reaction damage. While it doesn't outshine her signature weapon, it's still a solid upgrade from free-to-play options and adds strong team-wide value. Then we have her C2. When Ineffa's burst hits an enemy, her C2 marks them. After a short delay, or when they're hit, nearby enemies take AoE Electro Lunar Charge damage equal to 300% of her attack, plus her burst now grants her shield to nearby party members. This constellation has 2 major benefits. It massively boosts her burst impact, and it streamlines her rotation since she only needs to burst to activate all of her utility. This leads to a huge team-wide DPS spike, easily rivaling some characters' final constellations. C3 increases the level of her skill by 3. While this does increase her damage slightly, it also pretty dramatically buffs her shield's strength, making her much better at tanking than she was before. Ineffa C4 restores 5 energy every 4 seconds when your team triggers Lunar Charged reactions. While helpful on paper, it's mostly underwhelming since her energy needs are already low, and her best teams tend to have solid energy generation. It can be a nice bonus in comps where she struggles with energy, which is the only reason why this is not a 0. C5 increases the level of her burst by 3. This only increases her damage, and this increase is not a lot, truly her worst constellation. Finally, we have her 6th constellation. When Ineffa is affected by her first constellation's buff, she will deal AoE Lunar Charged electro damage equal to 200% of her attack to opponents in the current active character's vicinity after nearby thunderclouds release bursts of Lunar Charge lightning at opponents. opponents. This can trigger once every 3.5 seconds. This C6 offers Ineffa so much damage that it lets her beat out most main DPS units in the game while being off-field. This is insanely powerful considering she is every role in the game other than main DPS at C0, and now she's beating out most of them. While this might be overkill, considering that she is a support unit first and foremost, I think it's actually a good place for a constellation of this level, as it will guarantee she will always have use on your account. Ineffa's constellations are pretty hit or miss. The real power lies in her C2 and C6, with her first constellation also being useful, the others mostly underwhelming. If you're planning to invest, focus on grabbing C2 or C6, otherwise put your resources into her weapon or hold off completely. With constellations over with, let's move on to building Ineffa, starting with artifact options. Ineffa's best in slot artifact set is Thundering Fury, mostly due to the additional damage percent it offers electro reactions, including Lunar Charged. This boosts Ineffa's Ascension 1 passive damage and her own Lunar Charge reaction damage by quite a large amount. It's just the perfect set for her if you're looking for pure damage. If you need more defense though, Tenacity of the Millilith is the way to go. This artifact boosts her and her team's attack, which also amps her elemental mastery buff and strengthens her shield. This set is a perfect all-rounder, enhancing her damage, her team's damage, and the reaction damage, while also increasing her tanking capabilities with 100% uptime. The choice between these two is completely up to you. One is better for team DPS, while the other is better primarily for the shield, while barely reducing her team's DPS. However, I have heard rumors of a new set designed specifically for lunar reactions, so it might be worth holding off hardcore artifact farming until there's more news about the 6.0 artifact sets. For main stats, Ineffa shines with attack percent on the sands and goblet, plus crit rate or crit damage on the circlet. She prefers attack percent over damage percent on her goblet because it boosts her skill and burst damage, Lunar Charge's base damage, her Ascension 1 passive's damage, her shield HP, and her elemental mastery buff, ramping up her reaction damage even more. This is in contrast with damage percent, which only affects her skill and burst damage. Since her teams usually already have plenty of damage percent anyway, attack percent just gives her more overall value. For substats, prioritize crit, aiming for a 1 to 2 crit rate to crit damage ratio. Next, focus on attack percent and energy recharge. Both are about equally valuable. Attack percent boosts everything in her kit, while energy recharge helps with burst uptime. However, avoid going over 125% energy recharge to prevent damage loss, as anything beyond this point would take away from the more important stats. The sweet spot is 115%. If you're min-maxing, elemental mastery is useful too, but this comes last. Focus instead mostly on crit, attack percent, and energy recharge first. Next up is weapon options. Fractured Halo is Ineffa's best in slot polearm, thanks to its massive attack and crit boosts, plus an extra buff to her team's Lunar Charged damage. This not only amplifies team-wide Lunar Charge reaction damage, but also powers up Ineffa's Ascension 1 passive, burst, and skill damage. While not mandatory, it's insanely strong and the top choice for your first major investment after getting Ineffa. Symphonist of Sense is next, since it is essentially the same as Fractured Halo, but without the additional Lunar Charge passive. Despite the loss of this damage percent buff, the stats this offers still benefits Ineffa a ton. Numadu's Elegy is in the same boat, but with a little bit less attack percent. Other than that, this and Symphonist are essentially the same weapon for her. Staff of Foma is also good for the flat attack buff and crit damage stat, but it doesn't offer much else for her to use well. Battle of the Fjords is another good option due to the large elemental mastery and crit rate stats it offers. These stats massively boost her personal Lunar Charge damage compared to most other polearms available. Deathmatch is in a similar boat, as it offers essentially the same variety of stats, but to a lesser degree. Calamity Queller is also a phenomenal option for that huge attack boost it grants. It offers so much attack that it will be Ineffa's best way of boosting her shield to the max, while also buffing her and her team's Lunar Charge damage output. However, this would require a different rotation and will be hard to pull off, which lands it here, though it could potentially be her second best weapon. Then we have the consistent Jade Wing and Crimson Moon, which offer a large attack stat and a little crit, but nothing else for most of her damage to scale off of. Then Blackcliff Pole comes around and says, screw consistency, we're farming for damage per screenshot. Obviously, this weapon can be good, but only when up against multiple enemies that Ineffa can remove from the field quite quickly. Otherwise, it's pretty bad. Vortex Vanquisher is also pretty good as an attack stat stick. This cannot reach the same levels as the other better attack boosters that she has available. Staff of Scarlet Sands is pretty good for Ineffa, since it will reconvert her elemental mastery buff back into flat attack. However, this flat attack buff is small, meaning she only gets the crit from this weapon and nothing else. Skyward Spine is great as it offers a large attack stat, some crit, and enough energy recharge for her to use her elemental burst consistently. And then we are at Ineffa's best free-to-play option, Massive Wind Spear. This stat stick offers a great 24% attack buff and 96 elemental mastery, which is phenomenal for increasing all of Ineffa's capabilities. The only issue is the short duration on its passive, which can reduce its consistency. However, when pushed to its limit, it can be only slightly worse than her best 5-star stat sticks. But this is an event weapon, so if you don't have it and need something else, the next polearms could be good substitutes. Royal Spear is next up due to its large attack and good crit consistency passive, though it does suck usually and it is not worth obtaining due to this passive being potentially useless. Prospector's Drill is also a valuable option for Ineffa due to its ability to massively buff her damage. It is only ever worth using alongside a healer, that of which being Ineffa, which heavily limits her team options. It's also pretty good for that mechanical drip. Wavebreaker's Fin is next and works particularly well due to the large attack stat it offers. The burst damage is nice too, but it's not the main reason as to why it is good for her, making this a decent option even if you have it at only Refinement 1. It's still not that much better than this triple free-to-play threat, Katane Cross Spear, the Catch, and the event Inazuma Polearm. These perform about just as well as Wavebreakers, but are much more consistent due to their energy-generating effects and stats. They all perform pretty equally as our second best free-to-play option to Missive Windspear. These three are the true baseline options she has, as nothing else is truly better except one sometimes, Livonia's Slants. However, it is only better when used to support a team that desperately needs energy to function, so it should only be used alongside Cyno and no one else. Now, before mentioning team comps, it's time to mention what synergies Ineffa has with our current cast of characters. Ineffa is up first as the Anemo Driver that will massively buff Ineffa and her Lunar Charge damage using Viridescent. Additionally, he scales best with Elemental Mastery and Crit anyway, so he will be the prime member for dealing Lunar Charge damage. Ineffa will help him do this by offering him even more Elemental Mastery, which Ineffa can convert into attack when using Wandering Evenstar. These two also help each other massively, as their defensive utility, while weaker on their own, will prove to be powerful when paired together. Oberon is another member that slots insanely well into Ineffa's best teams, as he will help make up for the Electro application she doesn't have. He will also group enemies with his burst, buff the team with Cinder City, and buff his on-field party member with more consistent burst uptime and attack. In turn, Ineffa gives him a space where he completely outshines Fischl, which is a nice plus. Finally, we have Tartaglia, whose overwhelming Hydro application when against multiple enemies makes it easy to constantly trigger Lunar Charge, even through Dendro Auras. Additionally, he can also group using Viridescent Hunt if he needs to, and Ineffa will end up letting him deal a lot of damage through Lunar Charged. That's another point too. Since his scalings are quite low, he could be built using Elemental Mastery and Crit instead of the normal DPS stats. This works especially well when using a bow with a high crit stat like Aqua Simulacra, but normally his original build will be better. With Ineffa's reverse harem said and done, let's move on to Ineffa's team compositions. Ineffa shines brightest in her signature Chaser teams, which come in 3 variants: Anemo, Hydro, or Electro drivers. These comps unlock her unique reaction and Ascension 1 passive, which makes up to 50% of her total damage. No matter if the on-field character is Anemo, Hydro, Electro, or another element that buffs the team, Ineffa will excel here. Up next are some of the more oddball comps that still work well for her. Quicken is up first. While Ineffa does not offer the resistance shred that these teams need, she does offer a long-lasting shield and Electro application, which allows her teammates to have an easier time swirling it. Ineffa also offers more Elemental Mastery to the main DPS, which would help boost their aggravate or spread damage, as well as shield to prevent a main DPS from going down. These two buffs are great for most characters, but they're particularly useful for Tignari, who always wanted these two benefits from a support but never had them. Then there are Hyperbloom squads. Ineffa's Elemental Mastery buff shines even brighter here, since a huge chunk of these teams' damage comes from Hyperbloom, and now with Lunar Charge playing a big role, her buff is even more crucial. This combo is especially deadly with units like Cyno, who gets a massive buff from Ineffa as long as they are both paired with a strong Hydro enabler. Next up are Vaporized teams. This might sound surprising, but Ineffa fits right in. Since these comps need a steady Hydro aura on enemies, her Lunar Charge reaction can run alongside the Pyro main DPS units' Vaporized attacks without conflict, boosting the team's overall damage. It's the same story for Freeze teams. While she can't outshine characters like Escoffier, the persistent Hydro aura in Freeze comps lets Ineffa slot in smoothly. A Hydro aura is her only real requirement, so she can even fit into Physical, Crystallize, or other offbeat teams that might juggle multiple reactions. How she ages in these comps though, only time will tell. But for now, let's end off the video with Ineffa's rating. Ineffa's damage is incredible. At the worst, she can reach a 2.5 when used outside of her best teams, but when used at her peak, she can easily reach a 7 out of 5 in free-to-play comps. This is obnoxious, especially since she's a defensive support, landing her a 5 out of 5. Ineffa's application is pretty good. She applies an instance of Electro in an AoE once every other hit or 4 seconds. This is enough to keep her clouds active on enemies. However, it is not enough for her to have constant uptime of Lunar Charged. This can be considered a bad thing, but this slow application can also be considered pretty good since it allows her to function more reliably outside of her niche. So while this 2 out of 5 for application might seem pretty underwhelming, it can also prove to be a major benefit to her. For offensive utility, Ineffa can buff her main DPS unit's elemental mastery by 150 or more. This is not anything massive, as it merely allows them to reach the minimum requirement for dealing good damage with the Lunar Charge reaction. The real benefit here is this reaction, as its consistent damage far outdoes what Electro Charge could ever do, netting her a 4.5 out of 5. Ineffa's battery potential is quite strong. While it is over the duration of her skill's lifespan, the near 7 electro particles that can generate is immensely powerful for helping any unit build their burst back up, earning her a 3.5 out of 5. For defensive utility, Ineffa has a decent shield. While it is on the weaker end without the use of tenacity of the Millilith, it can be enough as long as you have another unit with pseudo-defensive utility for as long as you can dodge. When amplified in this way, her shield will end up being pretty strong, netting her a 1 out of 5. For flexibility and versatility, Ineffa can do a lot. She is a flexible unit that acts as a defensive support, offensive support, and as a sub-DPS all in one. On top of that, because she is an electro shielder, and because her damage is accessed simply by having a persistent Hydro Aura on the enemy, Ineffa can work in a multitude of compositions. She can function in so many spots that the list of teams she can function in is smaller than the list of teams she can function in. When you put all of this together, it is clear that Ineffa deserves a strong 5 out of 5 for flexibility and versatility. Overall, Ineffa is a powerhouse that offers a good shield, good application, amazing damage, great battery potential, and strong buffs, all while working in many compositions. This is unheard of in any other character, netting her a 4.5 out of 5 overall. This is the second highest rating I can give to any character, and just goes to show how absolutely overpowered Ineffa is. She could work well in almost any team as a shielding support, as well as a sub-DPS, an electro applicator, and a support buffer. On top of that, most of her damage is accessed simply by having a Hydro Aura on the enemy, which occurs quite often in many compositions. She is so strong that in these teams where Hydro Aura can persist, she will be about just as good as some of our best resistance shredding supports. Ineffa is crazy powerful and seems to be one of the strongest characters we have received so far. But that's all I have to say about Ineffa. Now tell me your thoughts. What do you think of her? What compositions do you intend to use with her? How far do you intend to vertically invest? Do you plan on changing any character's build because she is now in the game? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. But with that, I will skedaddle. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you all next time. Bye bye.